Alan could hear a rumble below him that began to grow like thunder. Then he heard Deke's voice on the radio say, "Liftoff!" Slowly, gently, Alan felt himself rising into the sky. Then the Redstone began to pick up speed. "You're on your way," Deke said excitedly. And so he was. Alan could scarcely believe it. The boy born and raised in East Derry, New Hampshire, who grew up with a passion for flying, was off on the ultimate flight to space. Not only that, he was the first American to be launched beyond the Earth's atmosphere. What amazing twists and turns his life had taken to bring him to this moment. Chapter 2. Destined to Fly.
"You're so lucky to have a basement like this,"
Alan Shepard's friend Joe told him as the two boys pulled open the door. Inside was a treasure trove of tools, discarded machines, and scraps of metal and wood.
"Luck's not a word we use in our family,"
Alan replied. And he was right. The Shepards of East Derry, New Hampshire, did not believe in luck, but in hard work and education. The roots of Alan's family tree stretched all the way back to the Mayflower and the founding of the Massachusetts colony. Various ancestors had then made their way inland and settled in and around East Derry, where they had prospered, first as potato farmers and then, as the town grew around them, as civic and business leaders. In fact, Alan's dead grandfather Shepard, whose basement workshop Alan was allowed to use, had been the wealthiest man in town before the Great Depression struck. He owned the Derry National Bank and the Derry Electric Light Company. And even after the Depression had forced the closure of the bank, Grandpa Shepard had retained enough money to employ a full-time butler and housekeeper. When Alan's grandfather died, Alan's grandmother, Nancy Shepard, had simply shut the door to her husband's workshop in the basement until Alan took an interest in the place in 1935, soon after he turned 12. Grandpa Shepard's workshop soon became a hive of activity. With the Depression winding down and the future once again looking bright for America, Alan, like many boys his age, took a particularly active interest in the aviation future of the country. Aviation had come a long way since 1923, the year Alan was born. The commercial aviation industry in America was just then getting organized. That year, the first night flights across the American continent were flown, using a new system of beacons to guide airplanes. As a result, the mail was able to be delivered across the country in about 30 hours, which was 2 or 3 days less than the old way of shipping the mail cross-country by train. When Alan was 3 years old, Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic Ocean from New York to Paris on the first continent-to-continent non-stop flight. Tall, handsome, witty, intelligent, and daring, Lindbergh quickly became the hero of every young boy of that generation. Although Alan was too young to remember the flight, he had read every word he could about Lindbergh in books borrowed from the East Derry Library. Now, in 1936, the age of commercial passenger air travel was getting underway. In 1933, the Boeing Airplane Company had introduced the Boeing 247, one of the first modern passenger aircraft. The plane came equipped with such marvels as a retractable undercarriage, upholstered seats, and a hot water heater, and it could carry 10 passengers in relative luxury at a cruising speed of 160 miles per hour. The following year, in 1934, the Douglas Aircraft Company introduced the DC-2, a 14-passenger aircraft, to compete with the Boeing 247. And then, in 1935, the company introduced the DC-3, the ultimate passenger airplane, which could fly from coast to coast across the United States with just one stop to refuel. To keep up with all the developments in aviation, Alan had formed the Airplane Model Club. The club met in Grandpa Shepard's